umbrella. Everything's going to be fine. I have my notes. It's all good. Everything's fine. It'll be alright. Here's my dirty little secret. I am a little tiny bit, only a little bit, of a perfectionist. I suffer with perfectionism. And that is a problem that may not be uncommon to you either. Now, here's the thing. This is an affliction, a disease, a terrible thing that we need to learn to overcome, because otherwise perfectionism can get in the way of your progress. But most importantly, being a perfectionist can really get in the way of your happiness. Now, as a self-confessed perfectionist myself, I cannot claim that the solution here is to get rid of that desire to be perfect completely, because if I were to claim that, I would be lying, because that's not something I have the capability to do either. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about when perfectionism might not be doing you any favours whatsoever. Now, I have a little bit of a secret. I too am a self-diagnosed perfectionist. So I would be lying if I were to tell you that getting rid of your perfectionism entirely was a good thing to do. I would be lying because I have no desire to do that for myself either. And also because there are times when being the very best of the best can be incredibly useful to you. However, this super skill that you have, this superhero ability to be perfect at the things that you do, or to strive for it and maybe not quite achieve it and then get really mad at yourself, this need for perfection may be causing some problems for you. And it's in those times that we want to be able to recalculate the situation and perhaps make some better choices. So essentially today's show is all about when you need to stop being perfect. The downside of being a perfectionist is that it does create an additional pressure on you. Now, there are times when that might be useful because stress can be something that really motivates us, and if it's about doing really well or being the best at what you're doing, then it could be motivating you in a really positive way. However, if you are a perfectionist in areas of your life that you really don't need to be, then perhaps you are putting additional pressure on yourself unnecessarily. It might be worthwhile considering actually thinking in your mind, or making a list on paper of all of the things that you aim to do perfectly. And then thinking about which ones really do make a difference in your life, whether or not you do them perfectly. Let's say, for example, you wanted to be perfect at your schoolwork, but you simultaneously wanted to be the perfect friend, and you simultaneously wanted to look as good as you possibly could. It might become a bit of an obstacle to try and do those three things simultaneously. Now, if you're very efficient, it may not, in which case carry on. But if you find that you're starting to feel under pressure, then perhaps you're applying that perfectionism to too many different areas of your life. If your friends don't care whether you look good or not, maybe, every now and again you could not make quite so much effort into making sure that you look dressed up and that your hair is perfect and that your clothes are perfect before you go out. If you've got a really chilled out group of friends, then maybe they don't need you to do quite as much for them as you do at the moment. Or another way of thinking about it, which relates back to a previous show, I'll link it down below, is if you're someone who constantly jumps in and helps people out as soon as they see some signs of trouble, then actually you might be limiting them from learning how to think for themselves by constantly saving people. So it might be a good idea to stop being quite so perfect at that. And then that frees up a load of time to focus on the things that you perhaps want to focus on being perfect at, like your schoolwork, for example. If you can apply that perfectionism in just one area, it's not just going to take the pressure off of you, but it's also going to preserve your energy for doing really well at the things you want to do well at, and stop you from getting burned out from trying to be perfect at too many different things. Another time when it's useful to drop the perfectionism quite so much is when it's not appreciated. If others are only expecting a substandard from you, then what's the point in being perfect in what you do for them? Once upon a time when I used to run training, I would run perfect trainings. I mean, they were so good. And I would include so many different things in there. It was really dynamic and really diverse. It was the most perfect training you could possibly wish to attend. But something that I came to realize is A, people didn't really appreciate it, and B, actually it wore them out. They were really exhausted, and that meant that they didn't retain as much of the information as I might need or want them to. Very often you can strip back on what you're doing somewhat and find that you still get the same sorts of results from other people, that they either appreciate you just as much as when you didn't put in quite so much effort, or perhaps they even appreciate you more because you suddenly become a bit more normal and a bit less perfect to them. So another time when you might want to think about withdrawing on the perfectionism a little bit is when it's not appreciated by others that you perhaps might have wanted to impress. And the third example I have for you about when it can be useful to reduce your levels of perfectionism / effort into what you are doing is when it isn't making you happy to do it. If you're going to be perfect at something, do it because you're in a state of creative flow, because making something as brilliant and as beautiful as it possibly can be really serves you and makes you feel good. If you're doing it out of stress or panic or pressure, then actually the results won't be as perfect as you might want them to be anyway. If you're going to be a perfectionist, at least do it in a way that works for you. Make sure that being that perfectionist and doing your absolute best at what you choose to do really serves to make you feel fulfilled as a result of doing it. If perfectionism is draining your energy rather than rebooting it, then that's a time when perfection isn't working for you in the way that it should be. So you might want to think about doing a bit less of it. The 3 things to look out for, the times when you need to stop being a perfectionist, are when, number 1, it is creating too much additional pressure on you and the stress of it just isn't worth it. Number 2, when other people don't appreciate it anyway and you could be spending your time and energy in better ways. And number 3, when it doesn't actually make you happy to do it. Now, as I said at the very start, I'm not telling you to drop the perfectionism completely. There are times when that attention to detail will really serve you well, but save it for when it is most needed, most required, most appreciated, and when it makes you feel good to treat that particular activity with the level of detail and perfectionism that you have given it. So if you found this video helpful, then go ahead and give that like button a jolly good hard poke for me so that I know it was useful for you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the red subscribe button and then the little bell next to it so that you get notified the next time I upload a video. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one for another perfect video. Bye! There's a wasp by my booby. Whoa! It's a very persistent wasp here.